Hey, Leon, welcome to the show.
Cool. Great. Thanks for having me.
You know, we ran into each other and became friends at a podcast conference. And I've said previously on Podcaster HQ how podcasting conferences and events really bring people together. And I got to say, meeting you and Sam at, I think at the time it was MapCon. It was like the last MapCon that it's called now.
Yeah, it was. Yep.
Right? Yeah, independent podcast conference in the Mid-Atlantic in the U.S. was a game changer because you guys have become lifelong friends and it's been amazing.
Yeah, it's awesome. I remember meeting you. I think I remember the time you were walking up the hallway and we were just like, oh, and I
You
think,
you guys were putting stuff up on the
yeah,
bulletin.
yeah. We were,
Like,
we were trying to get organized to start. So I think I was crewing that day as well for Joe. So
you
yeah,
were.
that was really really cool. Yeah. So I must say I'm a bit bummed out that with the present situation that we can't travel because
Yeah.
I really miss hanging out with you guys over there. So that was a bugger.
It really is because we were actually going to come down for an event you guys were going to put on,
Yep. Yeah, which got canned with
which
COVID.
got canned because
Yeah.
pandemic,
Yep.
unfortunately, and you guys aren't able to come here. But
Mm.
for you and your experience, and we'll talk a little bit about your podcast journey and how you got into it. Did you find the same kind of thing as I do, where podcast conferences or podcast meets and events, really, they're kind of different from conferences? I feel where people seem to bond or get closer to one another because of this commonality they have.
Yeah, so you've got a common interest, and I really feel that it's about the network.
Hmm.
I think the networking that we do at those conferences, they're more like a networking event to me. I think that's the important part, and I think that's where, like, from making like lifelong friends to, the conversations you have that are kind of in between the conferences.
Hmm.
That's when you kind of the gold happens. So, but definitely the networking and who you meet, is I think the best thing about those conferences. And you're right, they do feel a lot different to just like your average business conference, which is
Hmm.
kind of boring. I think they're quite exciting. I quite like them. So yeah.
Yeah, I would definitely recommend, guys, if you have a podcast conference coming up in your area, go participate. Hopefully, it's put well together. I can't guarantee if it isn't, but for good conferences, you meet and make these changes in your life, which is awesome. Uh, Leon, let's talk about your podcast journey because it's not a typical one.
It's a little odd.
It's a little odd.
I,
Why don't you
I
share with them
suppose.
why?
Yeah, look, I actually started off as an editor, not as a podcaster.
Hmm.
And so when I met Samantha, um, I was watching her editing her podcast, and I was seeing how long it was taking to edit it and do the show notes, and get it host it and get the episode up and that kind of stuff. And I was like, okay, well, uh, I'll try doing that. So I started doing that, and that's how I actually got into it by
Hmm.
actually editing Sam's podcast, and that just led to a whole range of looking at. For me, it's actually been about the business podcast where I look at the time it takes to actually get the job done, and I kind of think, from that point of view, it was like, well, if I can save her time, who else can I save time for as well? So yeah, so the journey actually started as an editor. So yeah, interesting.
Yeah, and guys, it's Sam is his wife Samantha Riley's podcast is called the Thought Business Leaders Lab podcast. I was trying to get it on so I could share it. No, will it do it? It won't do it. It won't do it. But we'll try and get the link in the description for you so you can check it out. I think she's at, as of this recording, just released number 300.
Yep,
Right?
just this week. Yep, yep, yep. So awesome.
Crazy, guys!
Yeah,
300 episodes. Like,
yeah.
how long? Do you remember how long she's been podcasting?
2015, definitely, because that's when I met her, and that's when I was editing a podcast. And I think Thought Leaders Business Lab has actually been running since 2018, and she had unlimited influence before that. So I think that was at 270 odd episodes as well. So
She's a hard
there's quite
worker.
a lot between. Yeah. And Thought Leaders Business Lab actually is 2 episodes per week as well. So that's
And,
a bit of
and
work.
and Leon has helped not just Sam, he's also helped me. So I've been blessed with a number of great podcast editors. Leon took the last half of my journey, essentially with Chasing Dreams, and came in and was awesome in creating it, and or just editing and helping me get the audiograms and stuff like that. So, Leon, right now, how many people would you say you are helping with their podcast? You and your team.
Um, I think at the moment we're quite small. We're only doing about 14 episodes or shows per week. So, but for me, it started as a side
you've
gig.
also
So,
just started,
so,
really. Like you've
yeah,
just
yeah,
started. So, in fairness, guys, this isn't like over 8 years. It's 14. He started like I
yeah,
want to say under a year.
yeah, yeah. That's
Yeah.
I think 2000 was it must have been 19. I think that was the idea was kind of born,
Mm-hmm.
and it wasn't until like mid 2020 that we kind of started off. And I think I spent like the first like number of months actually just refining how we went about the process. So we had like workflows and things like that. So while it's not a huge amount of podcasts, I've got big plans. And we're working towards it. And the main thing for me was making sure that we could consistently produce, good audio episodes and the social media and all those things that go with it. So, and it was consistent. So, because that's podcasting consistency.
Consistency is key, and even the podcasting game has changed over time. And I think one of the things you do really well is you've kind of followed that and talked about the fact, with podcasts, one thing you give are audiograms, quotes for social media, because I feel like something that people struggle with is, right, they create this beautiful, amazing episode, and then they expect people to appear, that people will just come because they've created it, that it's the field of dreams. I think something that you do well is help people market their podcast. Like marketing is something people don't want to think about. They don't want to have to do it. They think, I made the podcast. Wasn't that enough? Why isn't everybody there? Is that something that you took into account as you were putting together your packages and working on how can I help the podcaster to the best of my ability?
Yeah. So what's that saying? Build it and they will come. That doesn't work. I think it was the idea was from what I saw from Sam's podcast when we started was looking at going, well, how can you create like more content from it as well? So, from a business, like, business to business kind of podcast point of view, if you need to be advertising. So it's organic advertising essentially for your podcast. And if you want more listeners, you need to have somehow advertise it. And like you said, like if I think about, the podcast as well, if you can quickly turn parts of the podcast into, something they can use to actually advertise and, market their show without doing too much extra work, because, I think that's crucial to getting more downloads. That's you already got the content. You just need to like tweak it into something that's usable. So, that was a lot of it.
One of the things I found in my journey as a podcaster is anytime I post it, right? Because people are out of sight, out of mind. It's just how we are. So every time I posted a quote, a snippet, a clip, a audiogram, I noticed there was a spike in my downloads. And it's like people were like, oh, yes, that's right. There was let me go listen to it now. And it was like a trigger for them. And, that's the trickiest part, because people think, I got through the trouble of creating the podcast. How can I get people to come? And we don't really talk about that. We don't really teach that as podcasters, because that's a different area of podcasting, right?
Yeah. I feel like there's people that podcast because they love podcasts, and so they have a podcast, which is great because they're very into the tech, what mic you're using and what you're recording on and those things. And that's all important. Like, don't get me wrong. Like, if you have crappy audio, you've still got crappy audio, so you can't fix that. But getting that out and actually building, I think it's like about building a community, and without actually advertising and going, hey, I'm over here, like I don't think anyone's gonna see it. So I think they kind of miss half the like one half's the technical building part and the other
Yeah.
half is the actual, advertising part. So maybe it's more advertising. I don't know, but
It
yeah,
is.
if you
Yeah.
if you're not telling anyone about it, it's not gonna be heard, and you're not gonna build a community. And I think one of the best ways to pod fade is to not have a community around you. So if there's no interest, you kind of think, well, why bother? So
Pod fade. There's something else I want to come back to that you talked about, but let's talk about pod fade for a second. Just want to make a distinction about pod fade because I think some people who have planned seasons of their episodes or planned, hey, I'm only going to do this, think that they are pod fading. Pod fade is unintentional. It's kind of when you guys kind of drift off and just kind of leave your listeners hanging, right? You kind of just disappear. And do you know the statistic it is for pod fade?
Well, it's funny because when I started, it was about 7, and then it went to about 14. So I haven't checked in the last few months, but I'm hoping it's higher than that. And I think when you look at how many podcasts are considered active, I think that's probably also a good figure to use as well, because there's not that many actual active podcasts. So say if there's 2 million podcasts, I think there was like 800,000 were actually active. So they actually put an episode out in the last 3 months. So I haven't got the figures on me, but so a lot of them aren't actually active. They're just sitting there.
Yeah. I mean, Chasing Dreams is technically not active anymore, right? I mean, but it was a planned stop. But I think you're right. The statistic I thought was 10, but somewhere between 7 and 14 episodes, guys. That's kind of where it's at, where people will disappear. They'll just be like, I did it. And I think that's a lot to do with planning or lack of planning on people's parts. And a lot of it's the second part, which is where Leon is telling us about, hey, you're not advertising. People aren't going to know where to go. And so one of the things, let's say people find you, Leon, you mentioned something about crappy audio that I want to highlight because we talked about it before we hit record. And I was like, you know what? I want him to talk about this. There's a misconception that professional editors are magicians. Can you take this moment? Floor is yours. To clear up this misconception.
If you try and look at what an audio engineer is, it's very difficult to actually, actually work out what they actually do and how they different from someone that's an amateur. So, if you don't record the audio well in the first place, if you don't have a good mic, if you don't have a good room, if you don't have sound deadening up to stop the reverb, once the audio is damaged, it's damaged. You can't do any better with it. So if you can provide good audio to start with, you're going to have a much better audio to finish with. There's no magic to it. If you have reverb and too many plosives and things like that, you actually can't fix it. So once it's damaged, and that's it. So the editor's not so much the magic as the way you record it is where the magic happens. So,
yeah. I mean, don't get me wrong. Editors that have magic in them, but sometimes you guys, I think we think that they are, because of the movies and TV, you all think they can just replace people's voices and make it sound like everything was gone, that they can remove the dog barking. They can remove the ambulance in the background. It doesn't work like that. So I just want to clear that misconception because it's important that you guys, as you start on your journey, know that, no matter how much you pay a professional, there's only so much they can do.
Yeah. I think it's very destructive as well. So if you're trying to remove a dog barking, you're actually destroying your audio. So that nice sounding microphone that you have, if you have a dog barking in it, if you want to remove the dog barking, you're actually going to destroy what you already have, and it won't come back again. Once you remove part of it, it's gone. Yeah.
And Leon, the people you're working with, the 14 or the clients that you are helping with keeping them going and helping them, what is a common practice that you would say that you would recommend to people who are starting their journey on podcasting, right? You've worked with 14 different people. It's a pretty good scale of differences that you probably see. What is something that you would recommend to people who are podcasting now?
I think getting the room set up to start with, so now I'm on Sam's mic here, so I don't know if you can see it in the picture or not. But it's a bit off angle. It's got a pop filter on it. I can see Amy's mic there. It's way off angle. I know when I was editing Amy's audio, there was no plosives in it. It's so much nicer to edit. So I think, and also, just what's in the room. I think if there's some like, it needs something to soak up the reverb, so there's audio bounces off everything. So, right at the moment, I've actually got a big iMac right in front of me, but the wall behind it has got sound deadening on it. It's got felt sound deadening on it, so, but in the background, you can probably see there's actually not much sound deadening here because it's actually like almost like a display, so to speak. So, but if you have other sound panels, things like that, anything like cushions, anything that will soak up the sound will take that reverb away, and that'll instantly give you a better sound just to start with before you do anything. So, and the other thing is setting your mic level. So I can see my mic level at the moment. It's not peaking. Rule of thumb, don't go above, like minus 6 dB. If you go above that, it's going to distort, guaranteed. So, yeah. I mean, there's a few other things too. Like if you do go up higher than that, it's you don't leave any headroom to work with. So trying to adjust it later in post is difficult as well. So, yeah. But room setup and the mic is crucial as well.
And I don't think we talk about that enough, guys. I mean, these are things to keep in mind when you take a podcast course or you learn from someone or you read a book. They don't tell you that kind of stuff. That's why we're bringing podcasters, podcast editors, podcast leaders in here so that they can share these tips that they're having, because these are things they wish people knew. These are things editors in particular wish you would do before. And Leon, what would you say is a good way to test your audio before you go live with an app, and start recording?
So depending on what you're recording on as well, but most computers, like I know if I'm a Mac, I can just go to the system preferences and go to sound and actually just check it there, just see how loud the mic is. Mm-hmm. If you're on Zoom, which a lot of the people are using Zoom because they want to put on YouTube or whatever as well, you can actually make sure that you're not peaking. So I think on Zoom, I think you probably go back 3/4 of the way up. If it goes any more up the scale as far as volume is concerned, if it goes over that, it's probably going to distort. There's a few tips too, like on Zoom, you can actually use original audio. So you can actually set what comes off your mic actually goes through Zoom. That also helps because Zoom tries to like make things smoother and faster, but essentially at the quality of your video, the quality of your audio gets ripped up as well. So, but yeah, if you can check the level that's coming out, and there's probably one other thing I noticed people do, and I don't know if I'm doing it right now, is they knock the table, and I think if you can hear
a little bit. I did it earlier when we were off. Yeah.
Yeah. If you bump into your boom and the spring starts like making a buzzing noise, I can't cut that out very well. So every time someone hits something, like is it the pen clicking? That kind of stuff. Like it's amazing what people do. And then they shuffle the papers and they hit a table. And one of the guys said,
this is also annoying. When those with the Apple headphones, when they use that as the mic, it's the microphone rubbing.
Yep. Yeah.
Really
some of the girls have earrings on, and the earring hits the cord, and you hear it like that. There are only little things, and you probably don't even notice because you're so intrigued and involved in the actual, what questions you're asking, things like that at the time. So before you start asking any questions, before you start interviewing, make sure all that kind of stuff is tucked out of the way. So, and there's nothing wrong with getting started with using Apple headphones. Just make sure they're not like, swaying around, rubbing on your shirt, or your earrings are banging on it, or whatever it is. So
that's the tip. That's the key, guys. That's the tip right there. Right? We want you to just start with what you have. It's just, if you're going to do it, use the right things. And here's one, and I'm going to ask Leon if he agrees. Here's one thing I want to empower you to do. It is your podcast. If the audio is bad, stop the recording. Stop the recording and reschedule. If they're cutting in and out, if it's becoming garbled, if they're knocking into things, if the content's not what you want it to be, just say, hey, listen, I don't think this is working out right now. I think we're going to have to reschedule. Don't waste their time with because what you're putting out there is a representation of them as much as it is of you. And I have struggled with that sometimes because I feel bad, but I think we need to do better for that. What do you think, Leon?
Yeah, 100%. The other thing I've noticed is that you might have good audio, and some of your guests will turn up with, no mic, no headphones,
the worst,
and you're trying to represent them in the best way possible, yet they sound horrific. So it's not great for your audience, but for them it's really bad as well because they don't show up well. So, but yeah, like I remember one of the episodes I went to edit, it was actually a podcaster interviewing a podcaster, and it was distorting so bad that we couldn't do anything with it. Like it was completely ruined, but they'd done the whole podcast without realizing it, had to go back and re-record it. If they'd done a quick sound check beforehand, they would have realized that it was distorting really, really badly. So,
I don't think people realize that. I mean, I've had interviews where I've said, hey, listen, let's just stop and we're going to try again because of content. But I've also had it where their voice was going in and out. And it was because there were two of them and they were sharing a mic and they were just kind of going, and one was away and it was like talking this way. And I'm like, hey, we're going to do this all over. And then I was like, we're going to reschedule so you can both get a mic. I didn't care if it was going to be headphones or whatever. It's just like, you just couldn't share a mic because you could if you do it right, but they just weren't doing it right.
Yeah.
That's the problem.
Yeah. You can get away with it. We've done, me and Sam have done an interview with a lav mic in a hotel room somewhere.
Yeah.
And it worked out fine. But just make sure we had to hold the mic up in the right place,
That's the thing. Again, guys, it's possible. You just have to do it right. And if it's not being done right, like the example I gave, you just have to reschedule and tell them, you guys either practice or get separate mics.
Yep.
And I'll tell you, people appreciate that over you letting something bad go through.
Yeah. You will just have listeners drop off as well.
Yeah.
If you actually put that out, listeners will drop off. They won't listen to it. It actually, severe distortion or echo. One of the guys did an episode with their, I think they didn't have their earbuds in, and so everything 100% repeated, and you actually couldn't listen to it. It's like, and it was a great conversation, but you couldn't listen to it, so it was a waste.
So let's talk about that. Why is wearing headphones so important? I think people are like, you're being dramatic, but it is so important. Can you explain that?
Well, for one, I find not being able to hear yourself is particularly unnerving. And you can monitor it. They are called monitor headphones, like for a reason. So, and the other part of it is too, if you've got a mic on, like this, so I've got Audio Technicas on. I'm not sure what Amy's are.
Mine's audio. Is it audio? Yeah, mine are same.
Yeah, and they're designed for this. That's what they're designed for. And okay, over here in Australia, you can get AirPods like Pros for like $400 something, or you can get these for like $90. And I'm like, why would you not have these like just hanging around? Like, but that's exactly what they're designed for, right? So they're designed to be plugged into a mic and monitor, and you don't get any feedback. So because of the way they are, you don't get any feedback going back through the mic again.
That's what happens. That's what happens, guys. So imagine not having headphones and what you say goes back into the mic because the speaker is putting it back into the mic. And that's why we say wear headphones. Even if you get, like I have these, I sometimes wear monitor mics like this. I don't think it will.
Can't focus on it.
Hold on. Focus on my hand. There we go. There it is.
Yeah, there we go.
There it is. But it's clear and it's long enough that I can just tuck it under my shirt or something so that you don't see it. And with Chasing Dreams, I did that a lot. They can sometimes be uncomfortable, so I don't always wear it. But, there are ways. If you're like, I don't want people to see, okay, then get those kinds,
Yep.
So There's a way. There's a way.
Yeah,
I just
yeah.
think,
I know some of the girls don't like having their hair messed up, because
yeah.
you get like headphone hair.
Yes, you do. Oh yeah, see, Audio Technica. Forgot that they had that right there. Both of us have it on.
Yeah.
Leon, why do you think podcasting is so important?
I think the biggest thing is being able to have your own stage and tell your story. And depends. There's numbers of reasons for doing it, but maybe it's just about getting your story heard. And there is some, probably in the world, there's some stories that really need to be heard more than others, I would say. And there's, for whatever the reason is, whether it's social issues or political issues, there's definitely reasons that needs to be out there. I'm a business-based, podcast business, but there is definitely, I think because of the fact it is essentially a free platform. If you want to get there and not spend a cent on it, you could, as long as you got a laptop and a set of headphones, you can go for it. But you get to tell your story your way, and I think that was one of the things that really drew me to podcasting in the first place. And but I think that's your story your way.
100%, 100%, guys. All right, Leon. Before I let you go, you got to give these guys a tip that will help them as they're on their journey. Let's say they've already recorded 3 episodes. They haven't launched yet, but they got 3 in the bank. What's a piece of advice you would give to them as they're getting ready to start?
I think that the more you can build a community, the better. So start with the end in mind. And even if you've got 3 episodes up, like ready to go, try and make sure that wherever you aim your social media at, wherever you aim, as you go, wherever you aim your content at, is to make sure that you start with the end in mind. So, who are you speaking to and what do you want to do with it? And if you're trying to make an impact on someone, what is the impact that you're trying to make? And then everything needs to be, targeted towards them.
Yes. I can't emphasize how important that is, right? Because if we talk about the end in mind and you defined your audience and your audience is all on, I don't know, Facebook, and you're doing everything on Instagram, what was the point? You're not going to reach the people on Facebook on Instagram. So it's so important. I don't think people think about that. I don't think people think about that. That's veteran advice there, guys. Veteran advice. Yeah. Leon, thank you so much for coming on, just sharing your experience, the lessons learned, especially as these guys get gearing up to launch their episodes. Much, much appreciated, my friend.
Thank you. And always great to chat. So, and we missed hanging out with you this year, and hopefully we'll see you again soon in person.
Hopefully 2022. My fingers are crossed.
Yep.